line with industry standards. And we need to make sure that we are getting skilled individuals to manage and actually to make sure that deployment is done to meet certain standards. So the standards are there. In terms of data center standards, Uptime Institute is the most reputable, I want to believe. So Uptime Institute came up with its own tier standards, be it from tier 1 all the way to 4. We have cabling standards that you can actually follow. We've got data center operational standards. The one that I will probably want to touch on a lot, not a lot, but really with a lot more interest, is the cloud-specific information security standard. This is something that the ISO team came up with, I think, within the past 2 years, because it's a 2015-2016 standard that was being worked on by the ISO institution. The other thing is we also have cloud-specific standards, or rather data center security standards that have also been set up by the likes of Cloud Security Alliance. We've got the payment card industry standards. And we also have government-specific standards that can actually be adopted depending on the geographical or the national borders that you work in. Now, that's the cloud-specific standard. The ISO 2717 was set up sometime last year, between 2015 and 2016. And you'll notice the responsibility to make sure we are there or meet this standard is multifaceted. It's not really the cloud service provider alone that takes a role or responsibility in meeting this, but the customer as well is meant to make sure that they're putting the cloud service provider to task to make sure that they can demonstrate how they are meeting the information security requirements for the cloud service that they offer. It's one thing for a cloud service provider to tell you that I am compliant, but it's another thing really if at all you can do your own independent audit as a customer and gain a lot more comfort and have a lot more demonstrable evidence that indeed they've put controls and they've put some sort of procedures in place that is supporting your data assets. In terms of data center standards, we talk of tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. A number of people always ask, so what's the difference in the tiers? So the difference in the tiers really is just, it raises the availability levels for the services that you run or store within a data center. So from tier 1, you go all the way to tier 4 because tier 4 is the highest. What I'll want you to probably look at is tier 3 and tier 4 because for me, that's really where cloud service providers will be keen on. Cloud service providers will not be keen to run their services in an environment where unplanned outages have no limit. That will be a big risk. You'll want to be in a position where unplanned outages actually has a limit, and that's where the tier 3 and tier 4 comes into play. I already touched on availability. So on availability, you'll notice, but what I always highlight, which to me is the most critical thing, is the annual south downtime that you need to put your hosting service provider to meet. So you'll see it's still the 1.6 and 0.8 hours between tier 3 and tier 4. But the other reason I shared this slide is for you to have a lot more details on the differences. One thing you also have to appreciate is the cost of building. There is a very big differentiator. Immediately, you are scaling up to from tier 2 to tier 3. And there's a reason why that difference in price exists. So you'll notice tier 2, Uptime has an estimate that you'll be talking about $11,000 per kilowatt. Tier 3, you'll notice it's $20,000. So that means it's twice the cost. And this is why yesterday I shared with you that really data centers are not for the faint-hearted investors. If you are out for quick money, then I will honestly advise you not to go for this sort of investment. This is something that is an overkill and will take a lot of money. And of course, it takes you a lot of time for you to recoup on that investment. There are certain myths and misconceptions on data center standards. I think there's always that talk about tier 4, you need 2 power lines. That's not really the case. Uptime Institute took that out. What matters to Uptime Institute is whenever they're doing an audit, in terms of you complying to their data center tier standards, they don't look at the utility power, they look at generator power. There's a reason why they consider generator power as prime. It's because you've got control for your generators. You don't have control for the power that is supplied by the utility service provider. So on terms of these topologies, you'll see these are topological diagrams that come from Uptime Institute. And you'll notice there's a lot more consideration on engine or generator capacity as opposed to the utility line. It's because they want to judge you based on what you've got full control on, and that's really the generator power. The main difference between tier 3 and tier 4 again is because tier 3 you talk of live and standby. Tier 4 there's nothing as live and standby. It's active. At no point should your lights go off in a tier 4 data center because of an outage. So it's a lot costly to actually run a tier 4 data center. I think Standard Bank put up a tier 4 data center in South Africa, and today as we speak, they're looking for ways to commercialize it. Now, why are we keen on building hyperscale data centers like the one Terraco is putting up in Southern Africa? Look at that. That's a list of 2016 largest orders on data centers globally. Now, to make you understand why for us we see an opportunity and why we think if we do it right, then we'll attract the largest of data center consumers or the internet data center or wholesale data center users to come into our space, is because one single example, which is the 35 megawatt deal between Microsoft and Cloud HQ, that's a requirement that the entire East African market can't meet today. So it's again the butter story. If Microsoft was looking at 35 megawatt of data center facility, they might be right to say that there is no market, or not that there's no market, but there's no service provider, or that there's no data center in East Africa. But they might also be right to say that there is an opportunity for a data center operator to put up a 35 megawatt facility. But again, related to the cost that we just talked about. You are talking $20,000 per kilowatt. Multiply that by 1,000 and multiply that by 35 for you to appreciate the cost of putting up that facility. So it's massive. So this is the opportunity that we see. How do we see ourselves? What will be the biggest requirements other than just the investors? Power. So when we talk power in Kenya today, that is an actual depiction of the power landscape or our power capacity in Kenya. I think in the interest of time, what I'll probably just share with you is this. The total of those top 10 orders that we had in 2016 cannot even match 1% of our balanced power as Kenya. In short, what we are saying is we've got sufficient power to actually have data centers that meet the needs of the IT needs for the customers that we just talked about or demonstrated as the top 10 orders. And of course, you'll appreciate the kind of project that Kenya has. Right now, we are talking about the Turkana wind power project, which is going to produce another 300 megawatts. And we've got ongoing projects that also have about 400 megawatts of power that is meant to be up and running after some